Someday love will find you, break those chains that bind you. One night will remind you how we touched and went our separate ways. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon Decker, and joining me, my host companion, current Poobah Frazier, and not that big a fan of Journey, Sejohn Sarwick. Sejohn?
Hey, did something happen with Journey? Is there a reason why we're starting with Journey?
Well, it's not that we're starting with Journey, it's that we're starting with separate ways. Because, do you know what released on September 21st, 2023?
So this is about Resident Evil DLC. You decided to start with Journey because of Resident Evil?
Yeah, specifically because of the Resident Evil 4 Separate Ways DLC. And Wolverine just fell down. We'll talk about Wolverine later. I have to talk about the Separate Ways DLC. Because it ruined my whole weekend, but like kind of in the best way possible, if we're gonna be honest about it. So how familiar are you? This is Devon Decker asking Sejohn Sarwick. How familiar are you with Resident Evil 4, the original from 2005?
A little bit here or there. I've dabbled. So, what are you hoping to uncover about this 15-year-old game at this point? 20-year-old game at this point?
Well, almost 20. Right now it's 18, right? So it's, I guess Ashley is legal to just be an asshole. Sorry. Yeah, I guess I want to know, like, so do you know the story behind Separate Ways? And where it came from and everything.
Oh, okay. So no, I mean, why don't we? Even if I said yes, you should probably still explain it. Let me put it that way.
Right. I guess I just want to know. Yeah, we will still explain to the audience who might not know. So Resident Evil 4 is unique in the Resident Evil space. Well, not hyper unique. It's one of the more unique games because it originally came out in January of 2005 for the Nintendo GameCube. And it was the only available on GameCube. And that was, by all accounts, the only way you were going to be able to play it. But then, come August or September of 2005, I've got different things, and I'm trying to parse it out. But I believe it was August that it came out. It came out on the PS2. And it was the same exact game, but it had an added campaign where you played as Ada Wong, who is there, like, as a side character for a lot of Resident Evil 4, and now suddenly you get to play as her. It also added, like, the Mercenaries mode and all this other stuff that was not in the original GameCube release.
Right, and just to be clear, Ada Wong, a character introduced in Resident Evil 2, which, Resident Evil 4 is very much a follow-up to those events. And in that one, you had played with her a couple of times in the story to that one, right?
Well, I've never played the original. I know that in the remake, there's a whole section where you play as her during Leon's story.
I'm trying to remember if you had gotten the chance to play with her yet or not. But the idea that it was separate material was, people talk about the idea of PlayStation pulling this shit. They've been pulling it for a while.
Yeah. I mean, but it's also one of those situations where they tried to give you value for the fact that you're going to have to rebuy this game. But it's also value if you didn't have a GameCube. You, got rewarded for not buying it while it was exclusive. It was a really weird sort of situation. So, because he also, in addition to having to pay $60 for the game, and if you only had a GameCube and wanted to access that content, at the time, a PlayStation 2 was running about $150. So it's a $210 investment to play this new material, in addition to a time investment to clear the game again. There was no way to bring your GameCube save file over, and it was locked behind a clear of Resident Evil 4. So it was just...
Yeah, and this is also, at a time where, people are not kind of on the internet talking about all of this shit every minute at this point, right? We're talking 2004, 2005. This idea being that, you didn't really necessarily know this was coming. If you were a Resident Evil fan and you saw that the only way to play Resident Evil 4 was on a GameCube, you had spent all of your investment on that. only to turn around and find out, less than a year later that you didn't have to do that.
Yeah, and it was one of those situations where, like, it was a big deal that this is a GameCube exclusive. Nintendo's teamed up with Capcom for this exclusive game. Like, that was all of the marketing. It wasn't like now where Final Fantasy VII is going to be an exclusive first on PlayStation, and it has an asterisk and says 6-month exclusivity period at the bottom.
Right.
Like, they were trying to move units of the console by saying, the only way you're playing the new Resident Evil game that has Leon as the main character, remember Leon? Remember how much you loved Leon? Is to play it on the GameCube. So it was sort of a big deal. But the reason why I bring all of that up is the Separate Ways DLC for the Resident Evil 4 remake costs $10. Now that $10 price tag to me is the only reason why I bought the game and played it. Why I bought the DLC was the price. I was expecting to have to pay upwards of $20. I was expecting a $30 price tag. And that's just because it's DLC for a Capcom game, and it's DLC that from the moment the game released, there was a very large contingent of people on the internet saying, we want Separate Ways, where is Separate Ways? Why is it not a part of this? So, like, Capcom, by all accounts, should have known what they had. So when I heard it was coming out on the 21st of September, I'm like, you know what? I'm not one of these people who's clamoring for it. As much as I enjoyed my time with Resident Evil 4's remake, I'm still not a huge fan of the story. So I'm not really looking at it. But then it comes down to Thursday night. I have some time to game, and I'm like, let's just see how much it costs. And I see that it's $10. So I'm like, that's nothing. $10 is like, it's probably going to be not great content at $10. But the original version it was kind of reminiscent of the Hunk and Tofu gameplays for Resident Evil 2, where it was kind of a compact little, like, extra mission.
Right.
So when I see $10, I'm, so it's going to be
OP you're pretty OP from the get-go in those, so that you're not feeling too lost in the weeds, right?
Yeah,
right.
The whole thing is Hunk is that you have you're sent in as a badass with, like, bunch of weapons and a bunch of ammo, and your job is to go in, grab one of the items that is left behind when you play as Leon and Claire, and then escape. So, like, the whole point is that you're this badass guy who's there to clean up the mess.
Right.
So, and, like, that's what I figured was going to be with this. And, like, $10, I'll get to experience it. If people are playing it on Twitch, I won't feel bad, like, tuning in or putting it on as background noise. It seemed like a pretty solid investment. And it was, 9 o'clock on Thursday when I downloaded it. So I'm like, 3 hours, I can give it 3 hours and then I'll be asleep, right? That'll be fine. I was wrong. First of all, the people who are clamoring that the $10 is a ripoff and it should have been included in the game from the start are the type of people who forget that the GameCube version came first and it was just the game. It didn't have any of the added stuff that we saw in the PlayStation version released 7 or 8 months later.
Yeah, this is, it's easy to look at this and put it in the same kind of universe as the Catwoman stuff that we've talked about infamously on this show from Arkham City, where part and part is like same day you could buy a version that had that story stuff in it and a version that didn't, and the idea that the game existed without that story stuff is untenable to me, because like it is so it is so instrumental to the world building of Arkham City that Catwoman is there, and all of the Two-Face stuff that goes on in that story and blah blah blah, and like the fact that is not available in the main Arkham City game, as we have said, we find pretty egregious, right?
I've still never played that. Like, just I've never done the Catwoman stuff.
But this is not that case. Mostly in part that like there was a quote unquote completed version of the game that existed out there for almost a year beforehand. You know, like there was a version of this story that existed where people did not ever play this material, and they still felt like they got a complete experience and a damn good one. Like it's not like Resident Evil 4 was kind of the underdog, and then when the PS2 version came out, that's when everybody fell in love with it. Like Resident Evil hit hard pretty quick. So like this is material. This is supplemental material in its truest form.
Yeah. And it is. And it, especially the storyline, it's a lot of, oh, that's what Ada was doing. Oh, that's who rang the bell. It's like spoilers, but that's very early on in both of the stories. A bell is rung and it saves Leon. And it turns out that it was Ada Wong who did that, which is cool. Like, it's a cool little thing to show what she was doing on the island, but, you know, it's not necessary. Resident Evil 4 has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Right, and everything that happens with Ada is predicated on you having experienced something in the games with Leon, right? Like, those moments only hit the way that they hit because of the fact that you had played through Resident Evil 4 on its own, right? And had a complete experience there. It's not like... It is so dependent on what is going on in the main game. It doesn't really, like, kind of exist on its own either.
Yeah, it is such... additional material. It's essentially deleted scenes compiled together into its own story, right? Which we would talk about examples of that, but yeah. So I download what I think is going to be like a piss away little DLC, maybe a little bit of fun. I'm excited to play as Ada again from the time when I got to play as her in the Resident Evil 2 remake. Turns out that it's 7 chapters long, and I'm up until 4 a.m. the next day because I'm so engaged with this story. My biggest issue with the Resident Evil 4 remake, and Resident Evil 4 kind of as a whole, is that it never grabbed me. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm just kind of going along. I was grabbed by Resident Evil 2 and 3 and 7 and 8. It hooked me in a way that Resident Evil 4 just never has. Ditto like Resident Evil the First. Like, those are just 2 games that have never really grabbed me and been like, come on, you're coming with me, right? Let's go for a ride together. This one grabbed me in a way that, like, I was playing and then I looked up and I'm like, holy crap, it's 2 a.m., but I gotta be close to the end. I'm on the island at this point. So, like, let's keep going.
Right.
So, it was fantastic. The Separate Ways DLC. Now, granted, I think Sejohn's right. I don't think that if I had just played the Separate Ways DLC, I would have been as engaged, because it really does add some depth to moments that happen in the original Resident Evil 4. So I think, like, having that knowledge also elevated it. But for $10, the 4 hours of gameplay in-game timer, probably 5 real world that I actually got to experience, was awesome.
Yeah.
So, like, that's
awesome.
Yeah, and I'm kind of bummed that everybody's like, oh, it should have been included. Oh, $10. And then I look and it's, well, you know, in the beginning you paid $60 for it and maybe needed to get another console for the game.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it, though, is that I think that there was some pretty heavy burnout by the time we got to the Resident Evil 4 remake from everything that they've been doing with Resident Evil over the last 10 years, right? Between 7 and 8 being 2 new games that had, like, their own style to them that people kind of had to get on board with, to remakes that were just, like, fantastic remakes, but they came so hard and fast. We got 3 of them in a matter of 10 years, right? Like, I think that Capcom knew exactly what they were doing, trying to get this stuff out as fast as possible. They knew that if they waited too long, they were going to lose steam on people being excited about this stuff, and they knew exactly which ones they had to hit. They knew they had to get 2 out there. They knew they had to get to get 4 out there, and in between, why the hell not get 3, right? Because basically you were doing all the work with 2 anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, it's been confirmed that 3 was also outsourced to a different production company.
Right.
So it wasn't Capcom who did it the same way that 2 and 4 were done. Like,
right.
they they really were like, well, it'd be weird if we just did 2 and 4. So let's do 3. We have most of the assets. Let's
send
get
it to
out
somebody
there.
else and let them figure it out.
Yeah.
But so like Capcom knew what they were doing. They were like, we need to get this shit out ASAP, and they hit that sweet spot, I think, of just putting out enough material right now to not completely like turn people off. Like I don't hear people talking about how they don't want the next Resident Evil, but everybody is very much seems to be in that space, me included, where the next Resident Evil has to do a thing. Like it has to be something else. Like I don't need it to be a continuation of the stories of 7 and 8, and I don't need it to be a remake of any of the earlier ones. So like I'm curious to see what they do, but I need it to be something else, right?
Yeah.
And that's a good place to be in as a company. Like I'm excited about whatever their next product is, but I'm not in the mood to like they're not beholden to a bunch of bullshit from the last few games that maybe did or didn't work, right? So yeah, I'm curious to see where they go, but I do think that what you're what you're experiencing with everybody being so down on this, I think it's just kind of just run off from everybody just being very burnt out on Resident Evil at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's more the money thing is what really is blowing me away. Because everybody who's played it has loved it. And unfortunately, Resident Evil 3, which was already the one that everybody was kind of spitting and shitting on in terms of this felt rushed, it felt so short. I can't believe this was a full price game for the experience that we got. That's why they tied it to that crappy online game that I don't even know if it's still live at this point. Like, but I got it when I bought Resident Evil 3. So it was just a bunch of
what's
things.
That called? It's like the 4v1, the like lopsided multiplayer one, right? I forget what they call that.
Asymmetric multiplayer. I don't remember the name of it.
Right. That has such potential if they had really leaned into that, but Capcom has no interest in it like cultivating that kind of experience.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the second you played it, it was like, oh, this is again just taking those assets, dropping them in, and like, oh, you get to play as this character who's already a built character, and now you get to play as one of these enemies, and you already know what Mr. X does. You know how Nemesis works. So, oh, you have this move and you have that. Like, it was not. I've never played it. I will just be completely honest with you and say that I have never played it. And it was honestly, it's almost as if Resident Evil 3 was a bonus that you got for buying that game. And that was a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, it's kind of like one of you gets to play as like Overlord and like send out like minions and traps and shit to try and like catch the other people. You did have the ability to play as like Nemesis and Mr. X and all that sort of stuff, but what it was that you would have a power as the Overlord to take over one of your units at any time for a certain amount of time.
Okay.
Depending on what level you were, was how long you could take over that unit. And you could do that with any unit. So you could just become a zombie for a couple of seconds to try and bite a couple of people, jump out at people, or if you really wanted to go whole hog, you would send out you'd build up your power to send out one of those big boys, and then you'd jump into them to like just wreak havoc on the team before they figured out. And then like what the other side of that was is that you play as these 4 varying like teenagers in like basic horror trope teenagers, right? There's the sporty one, there's the book smart one, there's the stoner, like that whole thing. And it's your responsibility as your team to try and find pieces to puzzles, to like Resident Evil style puzzles, like find the golden eagle and the bronze tiger and put them on this toy box so that it opens up and that's the escape out. Like it was like escape room shit. So you're trying to do that while the Overlord is sending stuff at you. And like I said, it's such potential because like the environments and the look of Resident Evil and the story conceptually was super weird. It was all testing grounds for Umbrella, and like you somehow got wrapped up as like a test subject with Umbrella, and like what was going on there was really weird. Like there was so much potential to that multiplayer, but like I said, Capcom made no efforts to like cultivate it, to like take care of it or do anything with it. So like as far as I know, there's like a very niche group of people still playing it, but they might even be playing it like of their own volition, like creating their own servers. I don't even know if Capcom's supporting it anymore.
Support for the game ended with a final patch released October 8th, 2020. The name of the game, Resident Evil Resistance, released April 3rd, 2020, alongside Resident Evil 3, and support for the game ended, my God, that's 6 months
Yeah.
of game. Okay.
Yeah, like I said, they just gave up on it. Like, which is again, I think actually a really big missed opportunity. Like tying it to three, I don't love that either. But on its own, as a thing, it was such a wild thing for like in the Resident Evil universe to like really like explore, and then they didn't do anything with it.
Yeah. I mean, this is the most I've ever learned about that game. But it's one of those situations where, like, there's a reason why it was packaged with Resident Evil 3. They knew that Resident Evil 3 was kind of like a slimmer package. I mean, the game itself, the original Resident Evil 3, was, oh, we can release something for Christmas that utilizes a bunch of assets we already have.
Yeah, it's the history of that game, part and part. Like that's just how that game has always existed. Is just kind of as the afterbirth of two.
Right. And I loved my time with that game. And I liked that even like the achievements in that game, like Clear Inferno, you could use the infinite rocket launcher, but then they take that away from you for the final fight. So it's not like a walk in the park to actually do that. They made it difficult and challenging, which was fun. I liked the balance in that game. And then Resident Evil 4 comes along, and again, it's still the story of Resident Evil 4, which is something that I'm familiar with and not the biggest fan of. So then separate ways, I'm like, I don't really care. Plus, I'm expecting to pay like $30 for it. But at $10, like, and feeling so engaged with it. Honestly, the engagement is really the thing that I need to celebrate. Because
I will say, in terms of the price, just so that we're talking, Resident Evil 7 is the one that I have the most knowledge about as far as the DLC goes. I know 8 had some of its own as well, but 7's DLC was 3 separate stories for $30, right? So that would have made them $10 a piece, and those were pretty substantial stories. Like there were some really good ones. One that involved like an uncle character that you get introduced to that helps Mia and stuff like that. And there was some really good. There was some more stuff with the brother and the when you play as Chris Redfield, right? Isn't that like?
Yeah, there's more stuff with the escape room situations.
Yeah.
I've never played any of that DLC. I'll say that Resident Evil 7.
Yeah, but I think that they've been kind of knocking the DLC game out of the park for 4 or 5 games now, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's true. You're not wrong about that. Yeah, and the price now, I mean, it's on wicked sale right now. Banned footage has gone from $10 to $3.99. Banned footage volume 2 has gone from $14.99 to $5.99. Those are Steam prices. But, it's solid cost for that. And you're right, they did bundle it very nicely. And that game, I mean, Resident Evil 7 was such a return to form, and, like, they wanted people engaged with it. It's the one that got given away for free almost everywhere. Yes, you had to have, like, a PlayStation Plus account or Xbox Games with Gold account, but...
Or Stadia, or Luna, or something. Anywhere they could get away with giving that game out, they did.
Yeah, and then the way that they ran their revenue stream was off of that DLC.
Right.
Which, I mean, not the greatest, right? It's sort of microtransaction-y bullshit, but you get access to a game. I mean, again, Resident Evil 7, the first Resident Evil that really hooked me was the remake of 2. I've talked about that ad nauseum on this show. But then Resident Evil 7 was a game that I beat 4 times in 2 days because I was just so engaged, and the unlocks like kept me wanting to go back in to experience it again. So if I felt that way, and then the DLC, when it was released the first time, I don't doubt that I would have delved in at that cost when you look at all of the content that you get for that.
Right.
Resident Evil 3 was the DLC with Resistance. Just said that. And again, Resident Evil 4, it didn't grab me. I played through it. I'm glad that I finally know the story, despite the remake changes. And then this, I'm like, I'm not going to do it. And then, oh my God, like, just pulling me in. And then Resident Evil 8, I completely forgot Village in all of that. Like, that was a game that had me until it didn't have me. And where it lost me was the factory. Spoilers for Resident Evil Village.
The story of Village goes off the rails. Like any late game Resident Evil, like, I don't know why they let themselves get so fucking far down rabbit holes in that series, but they always do it. It always goes off the rails, and it inevitably leads to ridiculousness that just like gets to be too much. I don't know anybody that enjoys a complete Resident Evil package.
Yeah.
You know, like Village is. I kind of wish that this is gonna, this is nonsense because of it's still really good storytelling, but I almost wish that they had not tied it into to like Ethan and the Winters and stuff like that.
Which is crazy because it is so deeply tied to Ethan and the Winters.
Right. But like the ways in which like 7 so expertly really handles that, including the DLC packages, as I mentioned, there's some family stuff in the DLC packages that's also really interesting. Just the way that game handles that story so beautifully, and you like love it. And then 8 comes along and really adds so much more ridiculousness to that story.
Yeah, I mean. But like by the time you get to the factory part of it, you're like, oh yeah, I mean it makes sense that there's more game because there were 4 like heads of council within within Mama Marushka's freaking house. I know that's not her name, but like within like the mother's little thing.
Yeah, the Sinister Six that they've got in that game, right?
Exactly. But then you get there and I'm just like, this just feels like, oh no, we wanted to have a factory section. It's like, okay, that's like it doesn't.
For the minecart level.
What are you talking about? And then the whole thing where like Chris Redfield shows up, and that's like a whole separate game that doesn't feel connected. Where like, oh, you got to mark it with your little laser sight so I can drop napalm on it, and it's like,
yeah, exactly. Here's a giant fucking tank for Ethan to drive now. Like, like the first game. For 7, he was running around and can't even keep his hand on for longer than 10 minutes. This one, he is somehow fucking Rambo.
Yeah. Oh, when the mech battle, I'm just like, what is happening? Why is this occurring? Like, it's cool that it's happening, and it's very video games. And I will give Capcom all the credit in the world for when they want to get, like, hyper fucking video game, they know how to do it. Dead Rising 2 off the record. The fact that the end of that is not just a fist fight as like one guy tries to escape on a helicopter is excellent. But then what the actual ending is to Off the Record is that the secret military spy has modified a carnival ride to be a mech and Frank West has to deal with it. Is like, this some video game bullshit, Capcom. And I'm here for it because we're off the record. But this some video game bullshit.
Well, one of the important things to remember about Resident Evil specifically, because I will say that, that's some video game bullshit, but that's some video game bullshit in Dead Rising, right? Like fully on brand for that series, as far as I'm concerned. But the thing then to remember about Resident Evil is what Resident Evil really was when it first was created, which was to be this satirical look at like over the top action horror from America, like The Predator or like Aliens and things like that. Not Alien, but Aliens, right? But like that is the genre that it is spoofing, and it is why the first game, just with everything that happens, the first game ends with that is now the Resident Evil signature of drop a giant fucking weapon on you for the last 10 minutes of the game, and now you suddenly have a rocket launcher to fight off the what is he? The tyranny, the tyrant, yeah. Got there. But yeah, like they drop that like rocket launcher on you and to fire at this thing because you're supposed to be this over the top American action hero at the end of the movie, right? And that's what they always kind of do. So with that, I understand why you get to these places in these games. I understand why, I understand the goal in going down this path, but it just never seems to click with anybody that I know. That there always seems to be a point in every Resident Evil story, whether it's a game or 2 in, that people just kind of fall off, right? Like people are just like, yeah, I really love Chris Redfield, but with everything that they've done with him since 7, he's a really weird character now. Yeah, you're not wrong. I think he might be a word.
He's something. He's not all human anymore. I'll say that for a fact.
And Jill hasn't been for a while, right? So there's that whole story. There's so much weird shit that they do with it's a series that very often overstays its welcome, and I think that for the first time they've done a really they've done a really good job starting to back away while they're not quite welcome at the moment. Fingers crossed that 2 or 3 years down the line, they do come back with something, because I do want to see more Resident Evil. I just want it to be something completely out of left field. I want it to be something weird or cool or new. Like there's got to be some good hook to it.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I mean, Resident Evil 2, as much as I've praised it, I don't ever want to play it again, because that scene where I'm in the friggin' greenhouse as Leon, it's just like, this is stupid. I get why it's happening. I know that the lab has to be the end of it. I'm not even upset that I'm in the lab. I just don't want to fight the plant monsters again.
Oh, those stupid plant things that like drop from the ceiling, right?
Yeah, like I don't want to. Like that was fun in House of the Dead because I could shoot them and then just reload by shooting off screen. They're not fun where like I'm down to like limited ammo. Like it was like horror-y, and now you've turned it into this action thing, and I'm just not equipped to deal with it the way that you want to. Like every time I play it, I just avoid them. And that seems to be how I get with a lot of the games, is it gets to a point where I'm like, I'm just running past this shit. Which I will admit, in separate ways, I ended up doing that. And for the final boss fight where I'm like, well...
I appreciate that is not the way that you play these games, but you do understand that is Resident Evil playstyle. Is the literally the game loop is the decision between use your ammo stash or save it, run past it. Like that is quintessential Resident Evil gameplay. Is I don't have the resources to take on this threat right now. How do I avoid it until I do?
Right, no, I get that. I think the problem is that I have my batteries in backwards. I will kill shit in the beginning, and then as I'm like, I'm sick of this shit, I'll start to try to run past things, but it's the stuff that I'm trying to run past that can one-shot kill me that I should be killing. I should have been running past
not to mention,
the basic zombies.
Not to mention that we know that there's dynamic like leveling, right? Because the more shit you kill early on, the harder the game makes itself later. Whereas if you do more avoiding early on, the game doesn't bell curve out of being fun.
Yeah. It's just because I've watched a couple of people play this stuff, and there was one situation where I was running from like a JJ, which is one of the guys with like the bull head, and I'm running from him, and I'm like, yeah, let's go. And then there comes another JJ like blocking my path, and I'm like, oh, well, I'm fucked. Like, I don't know. I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just juke by them, and now I'll have two of them chasing me. And that's what I did. And then, like, it's not just Resident Evil 2 that has the plant enemies that are like, fuck you. The Regenadors in Resident Evil 4 Remake, I don't know if they're like this in the original game, so I can only base it on the remake, where they have multiple parasites within them, and you have to kill all the parasites, otherwise they can just grow new tissue and keep coming, and these things. And then there's a super version of that, and so I see the Regenador, and I'm like, you know what? I can avoid these. Like, in my run-through, I'm like, I don't have a rifle, so I can't target them with my bioscope to see the parasites, so I'm just going to run past them and hope that I'm okay. And then the super one shows up, and I'm like, oh, fuck, he's blocking a door. And he's not blocking a door, like, standing in front of it. He's in the doorway. And I'm like, the only way through this is to kill him. And I'm like, I bet we can find a way around it. And I did. I took some damage and was able to run past him. And I'm just like, man, I did this wrong. I should have been running past the basic zombies, but I killed every one of those.
Yeah, I love that your complaint is you got to a point where you needed to start thinking about resource management instead of just killing everything. And it's like
that's the game, Devin.
Man. And that might be why 1 and 4 don't click for you, because they, more than any other ones, start you off in that position. You start one with fucking nothing. You're handed a gun with a clip, and like if you're Jill, a lockpick, and it's like go nuts. Like and from there, so you have to make those decisions immediately. Of oh, I can't kill this thing right now. I'm out of bullets, or I can't kill this thing right now. I might need these bullets for something worse later. Right? Like that. That is your immediate mindset with that game. And I will say I felt the same way with 4 both times when I was a kid playing it on GameCube and the recent remake. Like they do such a good job immediately putting you into that tension, as opposed to something like 8 or 2 or 3. I will say I think 7 also really starts you in that position, but narratively it makes more sense that why you're in that position, right? Because like in 1, you straight up you're told you're a team of badass commandos. Why don't you have more weaponry on you and better resources?
Right. Well, we need to hold them. That one I feel is like the RPG problem, and not rocket propelled grenade, but like role playing game where it's like, yeah, we have the big weapons and stuff, but like we'll go in initially with our pistols because like we don't want to waste those. Like they're aware of the fact that like we should keep our resources kept well, and like that's why Stars acts that way in that one. I don't know. All I know is that you're not wrong. But even then, like, every time I start the game, I'm like, I need to consider my resources. You need to consider your resources. And then I get to a point where I'm like, well, I need to use all my resources right now. This is what I was considering my resources for. This boss fight against the insect monster in a black robe. And then, like, I do that, and I'm like, oh, but there's more game. And then I was saying, is for the final fight, I'm like, it's late. I kind of just want to be done. I sold off my other gun. Like I kept my pistol that I fully upgraded, but I sold off my the TMP, the little Uzi, and that was worth $70,000. So I'm like, I can buy the rocket launcher and I can just make quick work of the final boss. And I did. Like he started to morph, and I shot him in the chest with a rocket launcher. And I beat it. And honestly, I know that like everybody says the rocket launcher is just a way to skip boss fights. And like on some level, yes, but narratively, the fact that Ada already shot Sadler with a rocket launcher and it didn't kill him makes it really cool why she had to find a stronger munition style of rocket launcher to throw to Leon so that he could kill him in the final fight. That's why this rocket launcher has a red missile. Like it really like made this cool narrative moment for me, and I wasn't expecting it. Like it was
that's
great.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and again, like I say that I was running out of resources. I didn't craft anything in my playthrough of the Separate Ways DLC, despite having all of the things to craft weapons and things. So I kept it working. It's just that like. The time where I'm like, I don't want to engage with this stuff. I don't want to like sneak around. I just want to get through these areas. It was real fun for me. But you're not wrong. I like completely forgot about that. Like you made the game harder on yourself, Devon, by killing a bunch of things and it being accurate.
Yeah, I mean it's one of the biggest additions to the newer games is this like dynamic leveling that they do based on your playstyle, like and the fact that like you hit a point later on where you were like, all right, now that I've gotten this thing up to mega hard, I'm gonna start taking it easy.
I had a blast. I mean, I played it on standard. I didn't like hardcore or anything like that. I just wanted to experience the story. But I had a blast. I had a blast doing it. And then watching other people play it, I'm like, oh, that's not how I handled that. Like, it told me to leave the factory, so I headed towards the exit. And then, like, one flashbang gave me enough time to turn the dial to get out. It was fun. It's a blast of a DLC. And honestly, that's good to hear to me. Because, like, I look at DLC, and, like, $10 is, like, the sweet spot for, like, a good price to pay for it. Thinking about, like, Dimension Shell Shock and how it was $8, and that was another, like, good price to pay for 2 new characters and a new mode, like the new survival mode. I am mad at that, though. I'm going to take this little detour to talk about that, because I finally unlocked Leonardo's final skin, and all of the Turtles' final skins, their level 10 skin, are based on their wrestling costumes from the Archie comics. And Leonardo's is not. And that makes sense, because like they can't give him the samurai helmet that he wears in that, but like it sucks because he just has on like a full bandana. They didn't even give him like the silver arm and elbow pads. I mean, leg and elbow pads. I'm like, he just kind of looks like Leonardo. I wasn't expecting the helmet, but like I was expecting some of the silver detailing when he loses the helmet.
Yeah.
Like, disappointing. But Raphael has his like sweet all black outfit. That's cool. And then even Donatello has the sunburst pattern on his bandana. So they put the work in to do it. I haven't seen Michelangelo's, I'll admit that. I hope that his mask goes all the way over his beak, but I doubt it. But they could do it, right? It's just like adjusting, I don't know. It's adjusting sprites in ways that we've seen you adjust sprites for other characters. So, I don't know. But I was bummed because I'm like, I need to see Leo. And it had the like silver color to represent the palette. So I'm like, and all the other wrestling costumes are there, right?
Right.
So like that seems to be the final thing, which makes sense because NECA has announced that they're doing a 4-pack of them in their wrestling outfits later this year or early next year. And all of the other palette swaps are very blatant things, like even the glow in the dark palette you get for completing Dark Tomorrow and the Void. Those are based on Super 7's glow in the dark figures. Mm-hmm. So
nice.
Like there's a lot of toyetic synergy in the skins that are available in Dimension Shell Shock. So I was a little disappointed that like they couldn't go that one step further with what's his name, Leonardo. Sorry to go back to it. Separate Ways is totally worth it if you're a Resident Evil fan. If you're on the fence, I mean $10, you get way more than $10 worth of content. I am still floored by just 7 chapters of storyline. And they're good things, like nothing reinvents the wheel. Catwoman is a very apt thing to compare it to, because Ada Wong is essentially Batman from the Arkham Asylum games. She can use her grappling gun to melee people, which is, that's super Batman in that style of fighting. And she has a contact lens that gives her detective mode for certain aspects of the game. So it was a really surprising thing. If you like Resident Evil 4, and I arguably did not really like Resident Evil 4 that much, then you'll probably love the Separate Ways stuff. Because it is a roller coaster from the start, and it doesn't slow down. It is a thrill ride that is just an excellent experience. And honestly, I didn't think I was going to talk about it for 40 minutes, but that's how surprised I was by my time with it. Journey excellent, aside, man. Yeah. So we got tasks, but there's other stuff that we should talk about right now, like that the WGA is, as we talk, negotiating with AMPTP to deal with this, right?
What are we in, day 3 of tasks?
This is supposed to be the day where AMPTPA, right, Association of Motion Picture and Television Producers, AMPTP, have presented a deal to them. They have said straight out, this is our final offer. So now the Writers Guild of America needs to look at it, and we'll see what happens. I don't know. I mean, the deal that they offered before, like, was 90% of what they wanted addressed. So there's not much they could go upwards unless they're literally giving them 100% of their demands.
Yep.
But we are sitting at a time where, like, football is back. Right? I don't know if you've watched a lot of like NFL or college football or things like that, but the football takes over in the Decker household. I will admit that. The weekend is football time. I usually don't engage in it. I'm doing other things, or I want to sit. I'll watch for like a couple of hours. But listening to the game on NBC, all the college football was on NBC yesterday that my father cared about. They got like new shows that are coming this week. So we talk about, like, they had stuff stockpiled and ready to go. Mm-hmm. They held a bunch of stuff to be able to use now. Like, I understand why this is sort of that deadline for the WGA from AMPTP, AMTP, to like, make a decision how you want to go forward from here.
Yeah.
Because
there's definitely some things on their way. We knew all along that the studios were ready to hold out for at least up until the Christmas break, when all of these shows inevitably get through their first run of episodes, and at that point, as we've learned over the last decade or so, the way that they're making shows now, a lot of these shows might not have back halves. Is the problem. So,
yeah,
I don't know. I'm curious to see though what sticks, because with nobody out there promoting anything, it doesn't matter if your new show is out. If you don't have people talking about it, who's going to pay attention to it?
I was so surprised that this is a new show that starts Monday at 10.
The first place you heard about it with these commercials during football, not somebody doing an interview with Jimmy Fallon, right?
Yeah, exactly. But then here I'm just like, they have a new show every night of the week on NBC, and that's incredible to me. I had never considered it, especially when the two shows that had been renewed that then were subsequently canceled, and then that was blamed on the force majeure of everything that was going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can back out of our contracts, were also both NBC properties. I was double surprised that not only are they canceling shows because they can use this whole strike as a way to get out of pre-existing contracts, they also apparently had enough new material to not miss the September premieres week. I'm blown away. I honestly am.
Yeah, well, like I said, though, I don't know how much of that is really just kind of a front, though, because having 4 or 5 episodes lined up of a TV show is great in these trying times, but you're gonna run out of those quicker than you think, and it takes a long time to get people back into work to get more episodes made. So good for them that they've got a handful of new shows to try out, but I don't know how long that would last. 1 or 2 of them, they might have enough shows to get them through until the December break, but I wouldn't be surprised to find out that the majority of these shows that are starting, they don't have much more than a 6-episode starting season. Yeah. I think about those back half shows that started the last writer's strike that ended up coming around, basically kind of invented or reinvented the mid-season premiere.
Definitely. It's just one of those things where, and then I'm also basing it off of the fact that, they're targeting that marketing. The way that we're marketed to in our generation, we see something on social media or we hear some interview that was then compressed and put up on YouTube, right? We're not marketed to with commercials the way that the generations before us are. So that it's not just hearing that there's a new show with Jesse Martins that's going to be on NBC. It is also hearing my parents' reaction to that. And that oh, that looks good. Yeah, I'm a real big fan of him. It's okay, so your target audience that you want to watch these shows, you're getting them. Because they're also the type of people who Saturday is college football day. Sunday is regular football day. They're nailing the assignment.
Yeah.
And it's not great. And then also, in terms of, we've been talking about that strike, auto workers are currently on strike. That's another strike and that's happened up.
Every day.
Yeah. Bigger and bigger, it's increasing. And now also, government shutdown, which is essentially our government going on strike. And that one is also being supported by Joe Biden, our current president. Is saying yeah, you should. So we've talked a lot about strike in Hollywood, hopefully elevating everything. We're also now seeing that with all of these other contracts that expired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's been a crazy time in terms of striking and labor review and all of that.
I want to see how you're going to roll this into you talking about a pumpkin spice frosty now. Go on.
Well, Sejohn, we're still here at the Say Report. We're still doing our job. We're not Drew Barrymore, who had to apologize and cease production after everything, because we can do our show and we don't employ anybody. It's just you and I, right? And neither one of us. We don't have
a bunch of clips of Ben Affleck making us eat shit for us to put up, so we couldn't really do that.
I mean, there's definitely one out there, but good luck trying to find it. But yeah, so the show goes on, and what we decided to turn this one into, it's sort of like a gourmet episode of the Say Report. 50 minutes later, after talking about Resident Evil, and then just a brief check-in on the strikes, where like more news will definitely be available by the next time we're sitting in front of our microphones. So in those terms, it's pumpkin spice season. Everybody's doing their pumpkin spice offerings, even people who've never done it before. And one of those is, Dave Thomas's little baby, Wendy's, with the Pumpkin Spice Frosty. So one of the tasks I tasked Sejohn and myself to go out and try one of the Pumpkin Spice Frosties. How did you feel about it, Sejohn? I mean, were you able to get it? Tell us your journey.
So I was able to get it much easier than the rolled chicken tacos. Even like they were available at the Wendy's near me, and I didn't really have to go much further then. So pumpkin spice in general, right? Like the culture around like the pumpkin spice movement, and like then the anti culture around it, right? Like the pushback against pumpkin spice. It's just one of those wild things that are, like it is on the same level as the insanity that was the chicken wars. But the thing is like the chicken sandwich wars like have come and gone, right? Like we don't get those commercials anymore. That marketing like wheel has spun, and it is spun out, and we don't engage with it anymore, right? But something about the pumpkin spice wars just continue, right? Like I don't know what it is about this particular element that we have just decided as a culture is going to be the thing is going to be the punching bag, but we just keep coming back to it year after year after year. And this like weird move by businesses, fast food businesses in particular, quick service and businesses in particular, to embrace being the punching bag so that they can sell a product to you, because there's no way that Wendy's makes this decision and doesn't think, isn't this silly, right? Isn't this like this is a goofy thing that we could do, right? There's nobody in the room thinking like this is going to be the next spicy chicken sandwich for us. This is going to break the whole thing wide open. We're going to become the pumpkin spice kings with the pumpkin spice frosty. That cannot be your understanding of the situation. Am I wrong?
I don't, honestly, Wendy's has been trying a lot to stay relevant, like with the whole breakfast thing. Now there's breakfast at Wendy's, and they were like fighting against everybody to be like, yeah, breakfast, and everybody's like, no, we have breakfast. Good for you, Wendy's, joining.
Yeah, we've had breakfast for a while. What you doing over there?
None of us are going to fight you about breakfast. Welcome to breakfast.
And I think the other side of that is with like the ghost pepper everything, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like Wendy's is always the first person to be like, oh, there's a new spicy pepper out there. Let's throw it on every sandwich we got. Let's see which one people like.
Wendy's is the Taco Bell of the burger-based fast food chains. That is the way that I look at it. In terms of the fact that like Taco Bell has that menu refresh. Like, I think it's every 6 weeks that Taco Bell refreshes their menu. And you have the old reliable, but, like, that there's something new you can look forward to coming from the Bell. And Wendy's...
And Taco Bell in particular had to, like, dial some shit back, right? Like, They had gotten so out of hand but pre-pandemic with, like, the insanity on their menu that they literally had a full-on menu reset, like, back to zero. We're not even making, like, quesadillas for a hot second, right? Remember
that? Quesadilla Rito, like, remember that episode?
Yeah. And now what they do is they slowly, as you said, every 6 weeks or so, they're reintroducing weirder and weirder stuff, and some stuff sticks around, some stuff doesn't. They're tentatively getting back into like the unhinged pool when it comes to fast food, like, and so Taco Bell though, like, they have that shit down to a science, in exactly the way that we're talking about it, right? Wendy's, I feel like there's no method to their madness. The second something hits, they're just like, how can we fit this onto a meat patty and get it into somebody's mouth by 5 o'clock today? Like, do it.
Yeah, because like right now they have like nacho burgers that have like tortilla bits on them, and it's like, I don't want that, but like somebody
like pretzel
does.
Buns, like, we're gonna make the pretzel bun the default for this month, and it's like, you have to request it if you don't want that. What?
Okay, that's Thank you. Asiago. They'll put Asiago cheese on fucking anything. And be like, now you enjoy it because it's got Asiago on it.
Well, and I feel like they're also the first ones to always suggest to you to create your own secret menu. They're always the first ones to be like, here's this ghost pepper chunky hot sauce that we put on the nacho burger, but don't forget, you can ask to put that on fucking anything. You want some chili with that on top? You want some spicy chicken nuggets with us to just squirt it right into the box for you? We can do any of that.
Yeah, they are just like trying. So the fact that they would not, their big one was the cold brew with the frosty cream. So it's cold brew
I will
frosty.
say that I was also able to get a cold brew with frosty cream, no questions asked on that.
Yeah, that wasn't an issue for me. The issue was the frosty itself. So we went to a different Wendy's, and they're like, yeah, we got it. Why wouldn't we have it? And it's like, we can't start with that. We can't tell you why. We had to ask if you have it available. Please
We can't
just
pit the East Wendy's against the West Wendy's.
Yes.
No one would be able to. No one would survive the gang war.
Oh man. Yeah, so it's West End Riot. So we got it. And I understand why Wendy's would try that. Like they've been experimenting with frosty flavors in the last sort of 4 years. So it makes sense that like, let's finally do a pumpkin spice one. And I have to say, as somebody who has tasted a lot of pumpkin spice, actually, I'm going to go back before I deliver this bit of a verdict moment where you say everybody's okay with beating up on pumpkin spice. I think that stems from the fact that universally, as a society, we all agree that salted caramel is the superior fall exclusive flavor. I don't know where you land on that.
Superior flavor indeed. I love a good salted caramel. I don't associate it with a particular time of the year. Like maybe Christmas because Kroger comes out with those dark chocolate salted caramel Christmas buckets like that you can buy like the little truffle things in, and like those are like a quick go-to for every teacher I ever had. Like let me buy a small package of these. So like maybe Christmas, but even then that's a hard push for me. Whereas like pumpkin spice practically has it in its name, right? Like you need to wait till pumpkin season to have pumpkin spice versus like salted caramel. I mean, this maybe speaks more to my upbringing than anything else, but I ate candy all the time.
Right. I ate candy all the time too, but it is one of those weird things where like salted caramel is an all the time thing, but putting salt on it really feels like a back end of the year sort of thing. So
yeah,
if you notice, a lot of the fast service industry places add salted caramel right along the same time as the pumpkin spice. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those situations where like, yeah, it's kind of an everyday thing. However, because the two of them come out at the same time, and there's a clear victor there, right?
Yeah.
Like salted caramel, it's like coming home, right? You know, it's homecoming. Salted caramel's back to hang out through Christmas. Then he has to go back to his real job, and we'll only see him sparingly, and we'll always enjoy his company. Pumpkin spice is like the fucking townie, and you're going back home and having to deal with pumpkin spice.
Pumpkin spice is your drunk uncle at the party, right?
Yeah.
Like you know he's gonna be there, and you're not too disappointed to see him, but you hope he doesn't stick around too long. I think let me come at this from another direction because I think we both ended up kind of at the same destination. But I think like for me, the whole thing comes down to the idea that especially growing up in New England where the iced coffee is fucking king. Like Dunkin' on Ice is like the number one sold like coffee product I think in like the entire 13 states of the original Union, right? But the idea being that it's that time of the year now where things are getting chilly again in that area, and with that you are now switching back to a hot coffee, right? So you've been on your iced coffee for the last 6-7 months, and now you're finally going to switch back, and it is the release of these flavors like pumpkin spice, salted caramel, peppermint, or whatever, you know, like there's all sorts of different flavors. And the biggest perpetrator of that in our history has to be Starbucks, right? With that idea that like it's that time of the year where you just where you switch back to a nice hot latte. What is your flavor going to be? And salted caramel, I think one of the other big reasons why I have such a hard time kind of putting it in the same game as pumpkin spice is that salted caramel is such an inoffensive coffee flavor. There's already caramel sweet coffee notes going on. A little bit of salt in your coffee is like I learned that shit from Alton Brown when I was like 12, is to drop a little pinch of salt in your coffee maker every morning. Those are all flavors that already go together with a nice hot coffee, so it's not weird to me. Whereas like pumpkin spice, it's not that they don't work with those coffee and latte flavors, it's that it is not a flavor I otherwise find in coffee. Like, it is a step beyond what normally is in my coffee, and it is that it is in that weird gray space in between of like, this isn't quite what I put in my coffee, but it works with a hot coffee. So I see why people want this, but it's also not so weird like, say, like peppermint ice cream or whatever fucking other flavors you want to get that are so far removed from what's normally in coffee, it feels like a treat, right? And so I think the reason that it becomes kind of the punching bag is because it is in this weird in this weird space of like, it's not so fucking buck wild that it's like a niche thing that people like, but it's also not such a normal flavor that everybody's just used to it. And so it's an easy one for people to shit all over.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, I don't know. I liked it. Hey, I will say this. The pumpkin spice frosty that I got from Wendy's. Let me just recalibrate my jaw for a second. I loved it. I thought that the flavor was rich and it really invited me in. I tried drinking my frosty with a straw, which is bullshit. I don't know why they say that it can be drunk with a straw. It can't. Over
time, you go at it with a spoon at first, but then after it melts away, you get the straw to finish off the leavings.
Okay, that's pretty solid. But I tried it with straw right from the beginning, and I'm like, this is not working. And I'm not surprised it's not working. I'm just surprised that on the Wendy's website that the Frosty was designed to be smooth enough to drink with a straw, thick enough to eat with a spoon.
Yeah,
because that's not the case.
The Frosty lives in that weird world. We talked about this last week.
Yeah.
So I mean, I didn't dislike it, but I think where it was kind of throwing me and why I probably don't think I'll ever order another one is like, these are not flavors I associate with cold.
That's
that
fair.
Makes sense.
I get that.
You know, and I'm down for like a weird ice cream. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, one of my favorite ice creams. There's a place in town that does like a lavender rosemary like ice cream that is one of my like all-time favorite ice creams I've ever tasted. Like, I'll get down on some weird pumpkin pie ice cream if you want to give it to me. But in terms of like the cheap ass, I'm going out to a drive-through to pick up a pumpkin spice something to get me through my day. I think I want it to be a hot drink. I don't think I want it to be a Frosty, to be frank.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, Frosties for me, flavoring Frosties has always been strange to me because they're meant to be chocolate. Like, for most of our lives, they were chocolate. They introduced the vanilla when we were in university together. I was like,
that's true.
2006.
It was like a huge deal. They were like, now available in 2 flavors.
Yeah, like, it's like, oh, okay. I didn't think there was anything wrong with the flavor that you had. Because as much as I say it's chocolate, it's not like a heavy, rich chocolate. It's kind of like it glanced at a bottle of Hershey's syrup and was like, oh, I can kind of taste like that.
Like it's like you accidentally spilled some Hershey's syrup in your freezer and it froze over, and then you scraped off that along with all the other ice in your freezer and put it into a cup.
Yeah, it's not chocolate like chocolate ice cream. It's like, oh my god, this is chocolate ice cream. It's almost like swirl, but then they swirled it together. So when the vanilla came out, it felt like we've just removed the chocolate from the Frosty.
And we realized we could skip a whole step and still sell it to you, dumbo.
Yeah. And then with the strawberry, they're like, oh, now that we have the vanilla, we can just add strawberry syrup to that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I don't know. I mean, I liked it. I thought it was a good, rich flavor. I mean, the other thing is that, like, pumpkin spice, it's really pumpkin pie, right? It is all of the spices that go into with the pumpkin puree to make the flavor of pumpkin pie.
Well, so that's always a very distinct thing for me when somebody says that it's a pumpkin spice something or other. Are they saying that it is just the spices that are used to make a pumpkin pie? Because I think that's actually the deal with Starbucks, right?
Yes,
Is
that
like
is
everybody
theirs.
is always like, "What's the secret to the pumpkin spice?" And they're like, "Well, the number one thing that people seem to not understand is there's no pumpkin in it. It is the spices that go into a pumpkin pie that make it pumpkin spice." And it's like, okay, that's an interesting caveat. But there are some companies that go the other way with that. Like I said, like there's a pumpkin ice cream, like, and I will get down on a pumpkin pie ice cream. But one of the big deals with that is that there is actual pumpkin in the recipe, so you get like this really interesting like pumpkiny flavor, and then there just also happens to be some good spices and pie pieces in there.
Yeah. So it's a thing to note. So this was very much the spices of the pumpkin pie put into a Frosty. The color's kind of great. Dip in a fry in it tasted as delicious as it always has, doing it at a Frosty. I mean, I give
That's
it
the
to...
real trick. I
Yeah.
can't believe they haven't started selling Frosties with pre-dipped fries in them. Like, get a small fry, and would you like us to shove that into a Frosty for you as we hand it out the window?
No, because it's the DIY of it that makes it fun. Because it's like,
You gotta go
it's like
you
you're
gotta go
breaking the
full
rules.
DQ, like shove the fries in there, turn it upside down to prove you're good, and hand it to the guy.
Well, I feel like you'd get sued by the Queen of Dairy, Sejohn. I don't mean to be that guy, but they kind of own the whole, we're going to hold it upside down. Have you ever had them hold it upside down and it falls? I have. That was a
I've never seen
moment.
that happen, but I always think about it.
That was a moment for me. And that was because the woman in front of me in line was like, you need to flip it over. And they're like, actually, the way that you had us make it is not technically Blizzard consistency. So it's not going to work. She's like, you better flip it over. And they flipped it over and it all fell out. And she got mad. She's like, we told you that was going to happen. We told you it wasn't Blizzard consistency.
Oh, man. I am not disappointed that I had this pumpkin spice frosty, but I don't think I'll ever order it again.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't go to Wendy's enough for that. Like, that's the honest thing for me. First of all, the Wendy's near us is completely on, like, the do not, like, go there list for at least a year. Because I'm sick of it. Like, 3 times we went and is like, we'll have it eventually. And it's like, why is it on the app? Like, let's talk about this morning, because we were going to be talking about pumpkin spice. My intent was to go out to Starbucks and get a pumpkin spice latte. And the Starbucks closest to me, not in stock, which is crazy to think that they're already out of the pumpkin spice. But then I think, like, it was a rainy weekend. I bet people who went out to Starbucks before the rain started, they probably got that so that they could be nice and cozy as they watched the rain. I'm disappointed, but I'm not surprised at this outcome.
Hey, they told you.
Yeah, and they let me know ahead of time, right? Just like McDonald's, the locations that don't have the cookie pies or that don't have the jalapenos for the jalapeno double quarter pounders. Like, they let me know on the app. Mm-hmm. So when the Wendy's app says it's in stock, I have to believe that it's in stock, Wendy's. Why would you do that to me? You know what I learned about this morning and trying to get a pumpkin spice latte and failing from Starbucks? Are you familiar with Oleata?
Like the alternative thing?
Not Olestra.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about.
No. Oleata is a style of coffee that they do at Starbucks now.
Oh, yes. Okay, yes,
Yeah.
yes. All right. I was
That's
like, why are we talking about Alestra? All right.
no. That is pressed extra virgin olive oil.
Mm-hmm. Olive oil coffee, buddy.
What?
Olive oil coffee. I have family members that are Italian, and it was something that they used to talk to us about a lot when I was growing up. There's also ways to do with like butter in your coffee and things like that too. But yeah, I mean, they also drink straight olive oil from there. They own a cherry and olive orchard over in Italy, and if they're over there, one of their favorite things to do is to try the fresh olive oil. It's crazy. I think, because all I can think is, man, that just must make your digestive system a fucking slip and slide.
Right, just like Alestra. So it all connects.
All connects. But yeah, you can get the olive oil pressed coffee from Starbucks now. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, it just sounds like it would be viscous. Like it would have a viscosity to it that I wouldn't enjoy.
So olive oil coffee, the one time that I ever really was had it knowingly, was to taste it, to talk shit about it. I'm the kind of person that has apparently been to coffee tastings. I have a Scotch tasting this weekend too. That's something for us to talk about next week, though. But yeah, the one time I ever tried it, olive oil coffee definitely had a really weird texture to it. The one that always got me, that I always expected to have more of a texture, but actually is just creamy, is butter in your coffee. The people out there that have taught me that, the few times that they've served it to me, it has been fucking delightful. Olive oil in your coffee, though, it did definitely have it had a tinge to it that I was not necessarily on board for, but that also could have been because the olive oil that we were using was a very particular type that I was told needed to be used, because apparently most olive oil in America is rancid and shit like that. There's all sorts of weird stuff about olive oil in general that I actually, now that I'm saying that, question whether or not Starbucks is really giving a shit about.
I don't know. I was so surprised to see it, because it's certainly something I've heard of. I mean, the butter in the coffee is something that I do. It's one of those things that, when you went camping, that's what we did, because the butter will keep better than, creams or anything like that. So we would do that. It was a cool little thing. And I think of, farm times, too. If I've ever, stayed in, farm-themed areas or on farms, they're like, yeah, we put butter in the coffee. And I'm like, oh, okay. Because the milk is valued. I don't know what the thoughts process was. But then it's the olive oil. I'm like, I get it. I mean, I'm the type of person who's mixed Coke and coffee, right? I understand, these types of things. But then the smooth, velvety texture, I'm like, that sounds like code for viscosity. That sounds like you're going to drink this and you're going to be like, oh, I know I got a liquid going down my throat right now.
Okay, so this apparently comes from a Mediterranean tradition that they are, of course, commodifying. But thank you, Starbucks. But apparently the idea is that it's basically 1 tablespoon of olive oil to a cup of coffee, whatever you consider to be a cup of coffee. That sounds like a lot of olive oil to me.
Yeah. I mean, a cup of coffee, it's 8 ounces is a cup, right? I bring that up because Chris Pratt was talking about his, routine when he was playing a bunch of the characters to stay in shape. And he had to drink 220 cups of water. He had to drink a cup of water for every pound that he weighed. And I'm like, quick math, that if it's 8 ounces per cup, that's 1,760 ounces of water, or 13 3/4 gallons a day. I feel that would kill you. You just pop.
I mean, you just have a catheter in it. It's just working as one big system, just constantly in and out.
He's like, I was pissing constantly. And it's like, well, yeah, your body can't absorb that much water. I remember,
at some point, you're just drowning yourself, aren't you?
Yeah. You could get water drunk. Is that a thing? Oh, it's definitely a thing, Devin. Oh, okay. Thank you. That's somebody warned me, because I used to drink a lot of water. Now
not that much water though.
Not to the point where I'm like, I used to drink a 32-ounce mason jar worth of water. I try to do one of those every hour. And then one of the people was like, "Oh man, you're gonna get water drunk," and I'm like, "Is that real? That doesn't seem
Don't you
real."
only need 48 ounces of water a day? Isn't that the
48 ounces
amount?
of water a day? Yes, is what they recommend. So, yeah, but it was just I would never do it. But if I do 2 of the mason jars, then it's 8 ounces, so it's actually 64. Right? That makes more sense. It's 64 ounces of water a day. But then, on Survivor, they tell them that they should try to drink 2 gallons of water every day, which is just behind the curtains of a reality show and how not real it actually is. But they're like, yeah, they tell us to drink 2 gallons of water a day, and they have that well that provides them with fresh water. That's probably sponsored by Dasani or Aquafina.
Right, it's Nestle just pumping in water from some other country and probably use it more than these assholes.
It's not just that; it's that they just fill it up. You see an intern filling up a big reservoir that dumps out, so it leads into their cute little well that they have. Like, we're out of water. Oh, sorry. Donna overslept this morning. 1 second. There you go.
Some guy over here is like changing a water jug and doesn't know that it's for the island out there for Survivor.
Yeah, it's very long pipelines for that. It's also as we could talk about Survivor because netcode, right? It's a network coded show.
Oh man.
But yeah, so in terms of the Frosty, the Pumpkin Spice Frosty, how many Dave Thomas thumbs up would you give it on a scale of 1 to 5, Sejohn?
I would give it a solid 3. And I'm being a little generous there because I don't believe in doing half thumbs up.
I don't believe in half Dave Thomas's. Let's just be honest about it. I think I'd give it a 4. In terms of the various flavored Frosties that we've had, it is the strongest flavor profile of them. The strawberry one is a little weak. The vanilla one it's vanilla. So, like, the fact that it nailed what it is on the label is pretty good. The color is good. I think it had a good mouthfeel. I enjoyed it. But again, even though I'm giving it 4 full Dave Thomases, give it a thumbs up. I don't think I need to rush out and get another one.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like, honestly, at that point, shouldn't that half whatever score you give it? Because repeat business should be the main drive of any sort of limited edition fast food product, correct?
Well, yeah, part of it is that it should be the thing that gets them in the door, but then you should be offering them something to make them come back, because ideally the limited edition thing is probably costing you more to put out than you're bringing in, but you won't have it on your menu all the time, right?
So, I mean, what I think of is, apologies for this. They have the hot and spicy McChicken right now at McDonald's. I love the hot and spicy McChicken, but it's always only for a limited time. So, if I go to a McDonald's, I always get a hot and spicy McChicken. So, like that, I would give 4. I mean, I would give, like, the full marks in terms of, because it's a limited time, I want to make sure I can imbibe as many, I guess not imbibe, right? I eat. Imbibing is liquid. I don't know the smart way. Consume.
Oh, man. Envelop.
Yeah.
Consume.
I want to consume as many as I can before they go away forever. But that they said that, and they've been on the menu for the last 6 months. So you got me again, Ronald McDonald, you clown-faced son of a bitch.
Yeah, he's not even around anymore. You can't blame him.
You can blame him. Ronald McDonald's real. He's in all of us. He's like plastic and microplastics.
We're slowly going to start approaching a time where there's going to be people that didn't grow up with Ronald McDonald as like a thing in their life, man. Like he's been out of the scene now for 4 to 5 years.
Has he? But like, what about Grimace's birthday and everything?
Yeah, I don't know. It was really interesting to watch them try and celebrate that, and also not have Ronald McDonald show up in everything.
Jeez, I didn't realize that Ronald had disappeared. I guess he's as American as apple pie.
They started to downplay him back when like people were doing the whole dress up like a clown and scare people in the woods bullshit like 5 years ago.
I'd forgotten about that.
And they and Disney, McDonald's used that as like an excuse, but like I mean, there was a creepy clown mascot that they had gotten ragged on for years. I'm sure they were just waiting for the door to open, but they used that as like an opportunity to be like, during these pressing times, we're going to step away from the clown imagery a bit in our advertising. And then like since then, you haven't seen Ronald McDonald much, have you?
No, you haven't. It's strange. But then, I liked his Classic B Supo redesign from the early 2000s.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a thing that we also lived through. Oh, man. But I guess they wanted to move away from the clown stuff also because McDonald's wants to be taken seriously. They want to be talked about in the same breath as Panera Bread.
Well, and that was something that happened across the board. I mean, look at what happened with Dunkin' Donuts. That like the idea of updating your image to modern and slick and offering more than you like kind of like leveling out across the board what all these places offer, right? Like you can remember like the McCafe movement, like that whole thing that they did.
I imagine that the McCafe movement, McCafe movement coincided with the drowning of Ronald McDonald in a cup of 100% Arabica beans coffee. Sorry. You know what I do like while we're talking fast food? We've talked fast food for a good long time here. I'm a big fan of the Burger King homecoming meal that they started offering this past Thursday, the 21st.
I'm not aware of this one.
So apparently, here's the reason why I like it. Okay, so I don't know how to do this. I'm going to tell what the meal is first, and then we'll go further. So Burger King wants to be your destination for your meal with your homecoming sweetie. So before you go to the dance, you go to Burger King, and you get the Burger King homecoming meal, which comes of and consists of 2 Whopper Juniors, 2 milkshakes, a small fry, and a small onion rings, all for $10. Oh, you also get 2 paper crowns, right? So even if you're not elected homecoming king and queen, you can be the Burger King homecoming king and queen.
Oh my God. Okay. Yep. Yeah.
$10. I think it's cute. I like that you get fries and onion rings, right?
Hold on. So you said, you get 2 burgers, you get an onion ring, you get a fry, you get two shakes.
2 milkshakes, yeah.
And that's all $10.
That's all $10.
Oh man, that's only 6 items.
It's 6
and most
items.
Of those items are on the dollar menu.
Well, let's talk about it. A milkshake at Burger King is $4.79.
Oh man, okay.
So
that's where they're
basically you're buying 2 shakes and getting 2 Whopper Juniors, a small fry, and a small onion ring, plus 2 paper crowns.
You gotta stop considering that a benefit. That's not a benefit at Burger King. When I was a kid, those things used to be so prolific that they would just like roll down the street like tumbleweeds.
Yes, we've all known about your childhood in Rumford, where you were a beetle farmer, and you competed in the local beetle races for scraps of
crowns on.
But the reason why I dig it, the reason why I like it is I was elected homecoming king. This is a known on this airport. I've told the story before. And I was so bummed out that I didn't get any sort of crown, right? All I basically got was like the honor of standing next to the homecoming queen and being on the front page of the local newspapers.
They didn't give you like a sash or anything?
No, nothing like that. Just like, that's it. So when it came time for the next homecoming, I went to Burger King and got a Burger King crown. And I went and I went up, and when the kid was named homecoming king, I gave him the crown as like passing the crown from me to the next homecoming king. And then I watched the rest of the football game. And after the football game, he came up to me and he's like, "Thank you so much for doing that. It really bothered me when you won homecoming king and you got nothing." While Camille got like flowers and a sash and a little baton and a crown. So like, I love that you did it. I'm going to do it too. And it started a tradition at Coventry High School of the former homecoming king going and presenting a Burger King crown. Like, I full on started a tradition. I don't know if it still goes on, but it happened for at least 4 years from when I first did it. So it felt pretty cool.
I'll tell you a little trick, a little secret about the Burger King crowns. If you open them up and then just turn them inside out and close them again, they're not Burger King crowns anymore. They're just crowns.
They're just a crown, exactly. And I considered doing that, but then I also thought, you know what? Burger King was a big contributor during my high school experience. Like, what I used to every Monday, I don't know if I've ever told this story.
Coventry High School presented by Burger King.
Every Monday, me and my friend Nicole, we would collect change from people and then walk to Burger King and see how much we could get with the change we got from people. We had some feasts. It was a good time.
Oh, man.
I miss high school for like those things. Stupid things that we did in high school. But yeah, Burger King was such a big part of my high school experience as being the safest fast food place you could walk to from our high school. Like they were smart. There was clearly a designated path to get us from the high school to Burger King that I bet they made some minimum wage worker like break the branches and stuff.
We had one of those to the McDonald's behind our high school. There was definitely like a cut in the fence that somebody had put in there, and it sure as hell wasn't a high school student.
It's probably Ronald McDonald in his Klasky Super years.
That scamp.
But yeah, so I mean, it felt good, and it was nice that he continued that tradition. So life goes on. So like the fact that now Burger King has picked up on "We are the burger of homecoming." Thanks, Devon. I didn't get no residual checks. All right, Sejohn. Now it's time for me to do your task. Did you do the task too? Are you preparing a meal for me?
Here's the thing: is that I cook on a pretty regular basis, and I think, as I mentioned, I've been cooking more and more recently. Like part of it is because things are just getting so goddamn expensive in the city, so like going out is just not tenable all the time. But it's also just that time of the year, as when the cold sets in and we don't really want to leave the house. Legitimately, we don't use our oven during the summer because I don't know if I've talked about this before, but we don't have like central air or anything like that out here in Utah. What we've got is swamp cooling.
Ugh.
So basically, the house is never really able to get less than like 20 degrees cooler than it already is. Like without getting too deep into what a swamp cooler is, that's just how they work.
I figured you had "we live up on a mountain" cooling.
Well, funny enough, the lack of atmosphere actually means that the heat just is
heat
worse.
does rise too. I know. I think about like snowy mountains in Hawaii. So, like,
well, yeah, and there's a certain point you need to like get past for that to even kick in, right? And we're not there. I think where I live, I'm only at like 4,800 feet above seawater. We definitely go like camping in places that are like 6,000 and 7,000. I think there's even a campsite we go to that's up in the 9,000s, but like that's not where we live. We tend to try and stick out of the house a lot. Like we don't stick around the house too often during the summer. But in the winter we kind of have to swap that in order to make up the difference, right? So in terms of like meals that I cooked this week, I definitely could talk about a couple of different ones that I got into. But I think the biggest one that I would probably talk about is that because it is the fall season and we're just talking about all these fall flavors, I put together an apple cider chicken this week.
Ooh, that sounds nice.
Yeah, it's we are trying to get as much use out of the smoker before we have to close it up for the season, and so basically sat a chicken in an apple cider marinade for about 24 hours, and then glazed that sucker in more apple cider, and then smoked it for 3 hours. Just kept throwing apple cider on top of it, and it was fucking delicious.
That sounds really, really good. I'm a little jealous that I didn't get to try your apple cider chicken. Not as upset as I was. Actually, I'm more upset because I don't want it. But Dell's Lemonade has apple cider now.
Oh.
They have a cinnamon apple cider like beverage. And we went to try to go to Dell's yesterday. Turns out they're open weather permitting, and remnants of a tropical storm is not the weather for the lemonade stand to be open. So,
especially not at the end of the season, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I get those jobs. When I was a kid, I worked a seasonal summer job, and you hit that point in like September where any excuse you can to shut door for the day, you take.
Right. So it was just, I didn't really want to try it anyway, but like I do wish I could have tried your apple cider chicken. And that along, I do have to talk about the one I sent you at the end of last episode. Yeah. When you did it. But I would also like to talk about another thing. I was preparing meals a lot over the past almost 40 days because it was just me and Dale in the house. And we have a nice breakdown where if I cook, she cleans. And I much prefer cooking than cleaning. Let's just be honest about that. I think most people would. So some of my favorite things that I do, I always call myself the Bachelor Chef when I'm making this stuff.
I love it.
Purdue chicken patties and an air fryer. You spray them with Pam or any other sort of non-stick spray, right? You pop them in the air fryer for 18 minutes on 400 degrees. At the 9-minute mark, on the second shelf, you put 4 waffles and you make chicken and waffle burgers. Wicked
yes.
Good. It's so...
See? That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Like, I love doing that. We did it with regular chicken patties and the spicy ones that are available from Purdue that are like the real live chicken breaded and everything like that. Like the expiration date is that same week that you buy them. But really, really tasty. You put some maple syrup on there, and there's like a chicken and waffle sandwich that ironically and honestly is inspired from that trip where Will and I wound up stuck in Bowling Green for 3 days because we lost the tire from our car. as we were leaving, we stopped at a gas station that had a White Castle inside of it. And we were early enough there to try their brand new chicken and waffle sliders. So it's sort of my take on those chicken and waffle sliders. I want to get into making my own aiolis to put on them as like a sauce, but like I'm just now breaching into the aioli of it all. And then the other thing, the Bachelor Chef's like famous, and the reason why I had to send you the recipe last week, you laughed and like everybody was like, why the hell is Sejohn laughing? Is I had just written it down for the first time on August 28th because I realized that I don't do it the same way every time. And like I need to start doing it the same way every time if I want to get the same outcome every time. So I mean it's with store-bought mac and cheese, but I like to use Annie's, the organic mac and cheese. And this comes from a time where a friend came over and she was going to watch, remember White Elephant? It was one of those like, we're going to throw every reality show at the wall. One of her classmates from when she was in university was going to be a guest. So she's like, I'd like to come over. I don't have cable. Can I come over to watch it and I'll make you dinner? And the dinner she made was essentially my mac and cheese, but instead of hot dogs, she put in nice pieces of like, I think it was caserla sausages. They were nice sausages, right? Cooked up in there. But she still used Annie's mac and cheese, and that's where I fell in love with Annie's mac and cheese. So it's kind of my take on that. It's 2 boxes of Annie's mac and cheese. I like to do a purple box and an orange box. But that orange box can be easily switched out for the regular blue box of Annie's mac and cheese. The important box of mac and cheese is the purple box of mac and cheese with the aged white cheddar.
Can you break down for the 5 people what the difference is other than the color of the box? Man, this one tastes exceptionally purple.
Okay, so no. So the 3 boxes that I know of from Annie's mac and cheese, you have the blue box, you have the purple box, you have the orange box. The blue box is regular like elbow macaroni or like straight macaroni by the time it like cooks out. It's essentially Kraft mac and cheese, but with organic pasta and organic cheese powder. Right. And it's more like an American cheese flavored powder. The purple box is shells, which is a big difference because shells hold the cheese on them a little bit better. Right. And it's a white cheddar flavored powder, and that's just fantastic. I love cheddar to begin with. And then the orange box,
the bunny box?
No, the orange box comes with Portal, Team Fortress. No, the orange box of Annie's mac and cheese. I couldn't remember the last one. Is it Half-Life 2? It's Half-Life 2, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Half-Life 2, and then, yeah, Gary's model some shit. But yes, good joke. Continue.
Thank you. Annie's orange box of mac and cheese is also shells, but with aged cheddar cheese powder. I don't know how they do that in powdered form, but like, so it's double.
How do you feel about the mix and shapes though? Like, because you talked about the idea that you could use a blue box, but then that is going to give you 2 different shapes in the pan. And like, I don't know, man. Like, I get weird about my mac and cheese.
I am someone who grew up with Kraft mac and cheese. Like, here's a Ninja Turtles box of mac and cheese. Here's like monster faces. Here's spirals. I am not bothered by the shapes of my noodles. I will be completely honest with you. I prefer to go with the purple and the orange. Then it is all shells, so I don't ever have to deal with it, right? In case I get a picky eater like you, who's going to be eating my mac and cheese, I know that they're going to be fine. Plus, I prefer cheddar cheese to American cheese. Just like any time of the week, I'm always going to want cheddar. So having the 2 styles of cheddar to start with in the powdered form is a nice touch. And then, it's like that. So it's a box of the purple, box of the orange, 1 full stick of salted butter, a cup of shredded cheese, usually cheddar. I've been using a triple cheddar blend from Good and Gather, which is the Target in-store brand. Nice. And then 1 pack of hot dogs. And the pack of hot dogs I generally use is an 8-pack of Nathan's hot dogs. If I can find it, I prefer bun length, but if not, then I'll just use the standard. Yeah. And so, I mean, you boil it, you make the mac and cheese, and then the thing that's different with me, most mac and cheese requires the milk in addition to the butter, but by using more butter, it kind of evens out, as we saw with putting butter in coffee earlier. So, you chop up the hot dogs, you put in one box of macaroni, put in half the hot dogs, the other box of macaroni, put in the other hot dogs, and then you stir. I like to do 20 clockwise, 20 counterclockwise, and I alternate that every minute until...
You're getting into smalt and brown numbers on this shit.
Yeah,
okay.
right? So, keep it going, keep it aerated, make sure none of it sticks to the pan. Once it is ready, while it's 2 minutes away from being emptied, right, from draining the pasta, I put in half the stick of butter into the microwave and I melt it down. I've been doing it for 90 seconds. That seems to be a little bit too much. I actually had to clean the microwave immediately before this recording because I didn't realize that butter had splashed everywhere. But long enough so that the butter melts without much problem. About 45 to 60 seconds should do that. And then you leave that there because then you'll be stirring, and then you'll drain the pasta, and then you throw in the other stick of butter and you stir it up, and you make sure that that butter melts before adding the 2 cheese powders. And then you mix that up so it's evenly distributed, and then you dump in your melted butter and your cup of shredded cheese. You mix that up until it's evenly distributed. It serves, Dale and I each have a big old bowl of it, like a Martha Stewart from Kmart style bowl of it, but it could easily serve like 4 to 6 people healthy, and happily, not healthily. It's fucking cheese. It's, you pretty much like closing up your friggin' arteries with it. Let's just be honest with it. It's nitrates and
we've gotten really into the quick, like the deluxe max that like come with like the cheese sauces and things like that.
Yeah, that's cool.
They're just so much easier to throw together.
It's something that I would probably want to design a version that doesn't start with store-bought mac and cheese, and I'm clearly already doing that. Like I'm starting to experiment with it. The worst experiment that I did, and we ended up just throwing this out. I hate to waste food, but like it was one of those things where you ate it and it tasted interesting, but like you also kind of felt like, I feel like every bite is killing me. I boiled Mountain Dew Baja Blast instead of water.
You went for the TikTok method. See,
and all the noodles became that green color. And
if I ever hear about you doing this with fucking cough syrup, we're gonna have a conversation.
No, I would never do that. It was that someone's like, I'm American. Like I saw on Twitter, I'll admit it. It was on social media. Someone said, I'm American. I make my Kraft mac and cheese with Baja Blast Mountain Dew, and I'm like, I want to try that. And it's like, I did it. I will admit that I got enough Baja Blast Mountain Dew from Taco Bell to have the 16 ounces to boil. But you boil sugar, it becomes more refined, and it was a bad choice.
Yeah,
but I am experimenting with it.
I'm sorry that did not miraculously work out for you, but I also don't know what to tell you.
No, you don't need to tell me anything. It's like I get it. I understand that. But those are the things that I like to do. I love to do mac and cheese is good, especially as it gets cooler with that. But those chicken and waffle sandwiches are excellent in the air fryer. If you have an air fryer.
Yeah, man. That sounds fucking awesome. I'm gonna have to definitely try out some chicken and waffle sandwiches.
Yeah,
now.
The other thing is that
Dev.
was that.
Thank you for my meal.
Oh, you're very welcome. I will say that if you have the time for it. 9 minutes in the air fryer for frozen waffles, they are super good. Any more than that, they start to get too hard, but they warm it up. It's real tasty. And that I just do that because I only have a 2-slot toaster. So if I want more than 2 waffles, I'm like, let's try the air fryer.
Oh no, we've got a what's it called? Not a Dutch oven. What am I thinking of? A toaster oven. We've got a toaster oven for exactly those kinds of moments.
Yeah. So I've never owned a toaster oven.
A little Dutchman that comes up to the door, and I hand it to him, and I say, "Come back with this cooked.
Come back with these waffles prepared for me, Dutchman."
It's my Dutchman oven.
Fantastic. All right, so we've covered that. Is there any other things that happened this past week that you want to talk about before we set our sights on the next episode?
No, but you did kind of get into some stuff that can lead me right into my task for next week.
Oh, you got a task for next week too?
Uh-huh.
All right, I got my task for next week. The big thing is the next episode of the Say Report is our 350th episode of the Say Report.
I know.
I can't believe that those words like came out of my mouth. We're so close to have Say Report every day. And that is, I mean, that I always say that's the goal. I have a new goal. I can't talk about it right now while things are struck because I don't want to talk about struck material. I have a new goal, and hopefully we can make it happen. And I look forward to sharing it with you. But yeah, 350. I'm pretty excited. I know they're not as big as our like big round number episodes, right? Like we're not going to do 360 minutes of episode for our 350th episode. I'm sorry.
That's not going to happen. I am putting the kibosh on that right now.
I also said it wasn't. That's how I led off. Was that it's not going to happen. Also, it wouldn't be 360.
Just because you say something here means nothing in the real world, Devin.
It means 330 minutes because it'd only be half another minute, half another hour. Oh man, good times. Buck. Yes, so Sejohn, tell us your task, and then I will tell my task.
You brought up the delightful third host of our show, that is Mountain Dew. And it's that time of the year again, Devin. Mountain Dew's 5 years old. Voodoo. Well, the Voodoo's not 5 years old. Mountain Dew Voodoo is 5 years old this year, and we are on the 5th mystery flavor. And so I want you to pick up a bottle of it so that we can talk and try and guess what the new flavor is of Mountain Dew. I've been sitting here drinking one this entire episode, and I can't quite put my finger on it. I've got some theories, but I think for next week, if everybody can grab some, and we'll talk about what we think the new flavor of Mountain Dew is next week.
The worst part about this task, I'm just going to say it straight out. It's so hard to find Mountain Dew Voodoo around here. Like,
oh my God, really? We've got like cases of it at the grocery store. I've got a bottle of it. I'm so sorry. I didn't know.
I mean, it's fine. You basically gave me a scavenger hunt in addition to a task. And I love it. I love this as a thing that we're going to be doing. I'm really looking forward to it. Oh, I forgot. I was going to talk about something. I can spiral into it. So the task that I'm setting forward, there are video games that I have started and I've just never completed. Most recently, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I did all the bullshit open world tasks, and then it's like, come to Area 0. And I'm like, I just don't want to fucking do that. So last night I did it, and I'm so mad at Pokemon. I'm not going to lie to you. Another example, like just like Mortal Kombat 1, where you have this really cool idea of like amalgamation Pokemon. Like, because for Scarlet and Violet, it's ancient Pokemon. So you fight like a Jigglypuff that's called a Screamtail. So it's fairy and ghost type. Or you fight, I'm trying to think of the other one, like Fluttermane. So it's a fire ghost. Like, they're like all these cool ideas of like these amalgamated Pokemon. And you only see them for the end of the game. Where like, what if the entire story was these ancient Pokemon somehow escaped their containment, and now you have to go out and catch them and wrangle them back to that area. That would be
if Pokemon could somehow employ the Borderlands gun creation mechanics, because like in all of the Borderlands games, and Tiny Tina included, the like one of the biggest pieces of of math, algorithm running on those games is the randomization of the gun creation, which is why you can end up with some like fucking buck wild like weaponry in those games, and it's why they get to tout and say that there are like thousands of combinations that you can possibly get. But if you were able to take that kind of algorithm and apply that to like Pokemon you could run into in the world, that would be fucking buck wild. That'd be so much fun.
I know, now that's next level, and I think they do have like fusion Pokemon ROM hacks that do that. But honestly, the fact that the idea of ancient Pokemon was like, whoa, this one Pokemon looks kind of strange, is one Pokemon that you run into in the outside world. Like, if they were everywhere, like if it started, so you're in school in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, if it started with a field trip to Area 0, and then being a fucking idiot kid, you let loose the containment sphere, and then it's like, oh, you've bonded to whatever connects them, so you're the only one who can go get them back. Like, why would you save the coolest, most revolutionary part of your game for the last 30 minutes of the game? Ditto Mortal Kombat.
Have no faith in it.
Yeah, right? So, that kind of bummed me out. Yeah. But I just completed that. So, with Super Mario Wonder coming out in, less than 30 days, coming out on August 20th, I'm so excited for to play that game. And I gotta be honest with you, probably gonna be a time capsule on the 22nd. but we'll discuss it as we get closer.
Yeah, we got to talk about what's going on, because I think that might be another voucher buy. I think I might do Wonder and RPG, but we'll talk.
Yeah. So I'm very excited for Wonder. I got my whole day. I already got the day off. Dale has the day off. We're going to go pick up copies of it and then just play it as we wait for Spider-Man to arrive, because we ordered the Spider-Man Special Edition direct from Sony. So we can't get that in the morning, but we can go get Mario Wonder and play that. And then once we complete Mario Wonder or get sick of it, we'll delve into the new Spider-Man 2 game. Going to be a crazy weekend. Big gaming numbers. But with Super Mario Bros. Wonder coming, I have been completing all of the Mario games. That's why I did Lost Levels and made Sejohn play it. One of the ones I've not yet completed is Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. And my good friend Claude, friend of the show, listener of the show, hi Claude, has been on me to finally finish that game. So, what I intend to do this next week, and Siege and I encourage you to do the same, it's up on Nintendo Switch Online, which is probably going to be the easiest way that you can access it legally. I did find a cart that I had purchased way in the before times, like 2018, when Yoshi's Woolly's story was coming to the Switch. I'm like, I want to play that, but I want to beat Yoshi's Island first. So I went to a local game store. Some Sunday before we recorded, I went out to a local game store and then came back and we recorded afterwards. It was a crazy morning for me. But yeah, I'm going to be doing it that way. I'm finally going to roll credits on Yoshi's Island. Super Mario World 2.
And I'm going to try.
And that's what Sejon's going to try. I don't know. I mean, it's a game that, like, I always get bored with. I don't know what. Like, that is exactly what I can say, is that I play the game, I'm having fun, and then I just get bored with it.
We're not going to talk about it now, because that's going to eat into good material for next week.
All right. So, yeah. So, if you have access to it, either on original hardware, the Game Boy Advance remake, Super Mario Advance 3, is a remake of Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. You can do that, or just on Nintendo Switch Online, the Super Nintendo. If you've beaten it before, or if you've never beaten it, join us as we, the Say Reporters, try to complete Yoshi's Island.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's everything for me. If, the Pats are starting, and I do kind of care about that. So,
all right, everybody. Well, I think we're good to go, man.
All right, cool. So if you want to contribute or comment on anything we've talked about this week, the best way to do it, we are currently working through maybe a more modern way to get in touch with us. But for right now, it's still going to be email. Send that to thesayreport@gmail.com. And that'll get to Sejohn or I. And especially if you're looking to get something specifically to Sejohn or myself, make sure you put our name in the subject line and it will be distributed appropriately. But yeah, until then, Will, please bring us home.
Yay.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report. And you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.